Princess Hana stood alone beside the towering window of her private chambers, staring out at the stars. Once, those stars had filled her with wonder. Now they only reminded her of war. Beyond the palace walls, the night sky glowed faintly with the distant lights of defense platforms and military shipyards. Every light represented another attempt to keep her people alive. The Velkhari Empire was dying. Not from disease, not from famine, not from some natural catastrophe. It was dying because of a war that had lasted longer than most civilizations survived. For 300 years, the Theos Dominion had waged an endless campaign against her people. 3 centuries of destruction, 3 centuries of funerals, 3 centuries of watching entire worlds vanish from the star maps. Planets that once held billions of Velkhari citizens were now nothing more than lifeless rocks drifting through empty space. Generations had been born into war. Generations had died in it. And now, for the first time in centuries, her father believed he had found a way to end it. A marriage. Hana tightened her hands against the cold crystal railing. The idea made her stomach twist. She was a princess of one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. Yet her future had been reduced to a political agreement. A bargaining chip. An alliance contract. And the worst part? She was expected to marry a human, a species she had never even met. Humans. The newcomers. The upstarts. The civilization that seemed to appear from nowhere and somehow climb to the center of galactic politics in a few short millennia. It made no sense. The Velkhari had been traveling between stars when humanity was still struggling to survive on a single primitive world. Her people had built empires while humans lived in scattered tribes. The Velkhari had mastered faster-than-light travel before humanity had even invented writing. And yet somehow, the humans had become powerful, wealthy, influential, dangerously influential. While ancient civilizations exhausted themselves through centuries of conflict, humanity had remained neutral. They traded with everyone, helped everyone, fought no one, and grew richer every year. Now entire sectors depended on human shipping networks. Human technology powered thousands of worlds. Human banks financed governments older than Earth itself. It was impossible, and yet it had happened. Hana sighed and turned away from the stars. On the table beside her rested a data tablet. She picked it up reluctantly. The image appeared immediately. Minho, Earth's chief ambassador to the Velkhari Empire, the man she was expected to marry. She studied the picture again. Dark hair, smooth skin, 2 eyes. Only 2. The features still looked strange to her. Most Velkhari possessed 4 eyes arranged symmetrically across their faces. Humans looked almost unfinished by comparison. Simple. Fragile. Ordinary. 2 arms. 2 legs. No natural armor. No claws. No venom. No enhanced senses. Nothing that should have allowed them to compete with older civilizations. Yet somehow they did. And somehow they won. The contradiction irritated her. Her father had shown her recordings of Earth several weeks earlier. At first she expected disappointment. Primitive architecture. Simple cities. A young civilization pretending to be important. Instead, she had found herself staring at the screen in silence. Earth's cities stretched beyond horizons. Gigantic towers pierced the clouds. Floating transportation networks moved through the skies like rivers of light. Artificial islands glittered across vast oceans. Orbital habitats surrounded the planet like jewels. Everywhere she looked, there was evidence of creativity. Ambition. Determination. It was unlike anything she expected. Humans built differently. Most species constructed cities to last. Humans built cities to grow, to change, to evolve. Nothing about Earth felt static. Everything felt alive. That realization bothered her even more, because it made it harder to hate them. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The chamber doors slid open. Emperor Davon entered quietly. For a moment, Hana saw not the ruler of an empire but simply her father. Older, more tired, carrying the weight of 3 centuries of war. You are thinking about him again, he said. Hana placed the tablet down. I'm trying to understand why this is necessary. The Emperor walked beside her and looked out at the stars. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, he answered, because for the first time in 300 years, we have hope. His voice was barely above a whisper. The humans can give us something no fleet has been able to provide. Hana looked at him. A victory? He slowly shook his head. No. His tired eyes remained fixed on the distant stars. Peace. The word hung between them. Simple. Powerful. Painful. Because after 3 centuries of war, peace felt almost impossible to imagine. Have you ever met Ambassador Minho? Hana asked. A faint smile appeared on her father's face. Several times. And? The Emperor laughed quietly. A rare sound. He's not what you expect. Hana frowned. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. The Emperor turned toward her. The mistake most species make is believing humans are young. They are. But they are also something far more dangerous. Hana crossed her arms. What? The Emperor's expression became thoughtful. They learn. The answer seemed too simple, yet something in his voice made her pause. They learn faster than anyone. They adapt faster than anyone. And once they decide something matters, a shadow crossed his face. They become almost impossible to stop. Hana glanced once more at the image of Minho on the tablet. The human ambassador stared back with calm, unreadable eyes. For the first time, she felt something other than annoyance. Curiosity. Tomorrow, she would finally meet the man who might save her empire. Or change her life forever. The buildings were elegant. The streets were peaceful. There were no soldiers marching, no weapons on display. How did they survive without showing their strength? 3 weeks later, Hana traveled to Earth for the first meeting. She expected a primitive world, but the shuttle landed in a city that gleamed with clean energy and green spaces. The humans greeted her with respect, but not fear. That bothered her. Most species showed fear when meeting royalty. Her people were warriors, tall and strong, but these humans simply smiled and welcomed her. Minho met her in a garden filled with flowers. He bowed in the human custom, then looked directly into her eyes. Hana's people considered direct eye contact a challenge, but she forced herself to remember that humans had different customs. He spoke her language perfectly without any accent. That was impressive. Most translators gave humans a strange way of speaking. Princess Hana, he said quietly, I know this marriage is not what you wanted. It is not what I expected either, but perhaps we can make it bearable for both of us. His honesty surprised her. She had expected flowery words and false promises. Instead, he offered simple truth. She studied him carefully. He was calm. Very calm. Too calm. Most people were nervous around her. But Minho stood with his hands relaxed at his sides, breathing slowly. She could not read his biosigns at all. Was he trained to hide his emotions, or did he simply not care? Why did you agree to this? She asked him. Because my people believe in peace, Minho answered. And because someone must take the first step toward ending this war. If my marriage can save lives, then it is a small price. Over the next few days, Hana attended human ceremonies and cultural events. She watched humans sit in silent meditation for hours, not moving, barely breathing. They called it finding their center. She thought it was strange and pointless. She saw human children playing games that seemed to have no rules. She tasted human food, which was surprisingly good. And she noticed that Minho always seemed to know where she was, even when his back was turned. One evening, she tested him. She stood behind him in the garden while he looked at the sunset. She made no sound. She held her breath. But before she could speak, he said, The stars are beautiful tonight, are they not, princess? Hana felt a chill run through her. He could not have heard her. She had made no sound, but somehow he knew she was there. When she asked him how, he simply smiled and said, I felt your presence. The wedding took place on a neutral station between their two worlds. Representatives from dozens of species attended. The ceremony mixed Valkyrie traditions with human ones. When it came time for the human vows, Minho placed his hand over her heart. He spoke in an ancient earth language that even the translators could not parse. Hana felt warmth spread through her chest, like gentle sunlight. It faded quickly, but the memory stayed with her. After the ceremony, they boarded a ship to return to the Velcari capital. Hana was now officially married to this strange, quiet human. She did not love him. She barely knew him. But she had to admit he was not what she expected. He was polite, but not submissive. Calm, but not cold. And there was something about him. Something she could not quite understand. During the journey, the ship hit turbulence as it passed through an unstable region of space. The other passengers gripped their seats, fear showing in their faces. But Minho sat perfectly still, his eyes closed, breathing slowly. And Hana noticed something impossible. He moved his hand slightly to the left, just before the ship lurched in that direction. He shifted his weight to the right, moments before the ship tilted right. It was as if he knew what would happen before it happened. When the turbulence ended, Hana leaned close to him and whispered, "How did you do that?" Mino opened his eyes and looked at her. For a moment, she saw something deep in his gaze, something old and powerful. Then he smiled gently and said, "Practice, princess. Just practice." But Hana knew he was not telling her the whole truth. And for the first time since this arrangement began, she felt not anger or resentment, but curiosity. What were these humans hiding? And what had she really married into? Life in the Velcari palace was strange for Minho, but he adapted quickly. Too quickly. Hana watched him learn the layout of the massive building in just 3 days. The palace had over 1,000 rooms spread across 12 levels. Most newcomers got lost for weeks, but Minho walked through the corridors as if he had lived there his whole life. "How do you know where everything is?" Hana asked him one morning, as he led her directly to a meeting room she had not mentioned. "I just have a feeling," Minho replied. "The palace has a certain flow to it. Once you sense the pattern, navigation becomes simple." His answer made no sense. Buildings did not have patterns that could be felt, but Hana said nothing. She was starting to collect these small mysteries about her husband. The way he always woke up 30 seconds before her alarm. The way he could tell what mood she was in without looking at her face. The way he quoted historical texts he should not have access to. Meanwhile, the war grew worse. News arrived that the Theos Dominion had attacked another colony world. 3 million Vakari were dead. The alliance with Earth had not stopped the killing. Hana felt the weight of those deaths on her shoulders. She had married this human for nothing. Peace was still far away. The royal court held a formal dinner to discuss the war. Hana sat beside Minho, who remained quiet as the nobles argued. One nobleman, Lord Tammen, had always disliked the human alliance. He stood and spoke loudly. "We have tied ourselves to primitives," Tammen declared. "Humans are lucky children who stumbled into wealth. They have no real power. But this marriage was a mistake." Hana started to respond, but Minho spoke first. His voice was soft, but clear. "Lord Tammen, how is your daughter Nari? I heard she has been ill." The room went silent. Nari's illness was a carefully guarded secret. Only the Emperor's inner circle knew about it. Tammen's face went pale. He stared at Minho with wide eyes. "How do you know about that?" Tammen whispered. Minho smiled gently. "I could feel your fear beneath your arrogance, my lord. A father's fear for his child is unmistakable. I simply made an educated guess." Tammen sat down quickly and said nothing more. The other nobles looked at Minho with new eyes filled with uncertainty and a little fear. After the dinner, Hana pulled Minho aside. "That was not a guess," she said firmly. "You knew about his daughter. How?" Minho looked at her for a long moment. She could see him deciding whether to tell the truth. Finally, he spoke. "Humans have senses that other species do not. We can feel things, emotions, intentions, sometimes even thoughts if they are strong enough. It is difficult to explain. That is not possible." Hana said, "No species can read minds." "We do not read minds," Minho corrected. "We sense the shape of things, the pattern behind the surface. Your people see the universe through technology and logic. My people learn to see it through awareness and intuition." Before Hana could respond, alarms blared through the palace. Someone was attacking. Hana ran toward the security center, with Minho following close behind. Her personal guard met them in the corridor, weapons ready. They had detected an assassin in the royal gardens. Hana ordered the guards to lock down the palace while she went to assess the situation. It was her duty as crowned princess to face threats directly. Mino stayed beside her, despite her telling him to seek safety. They reached the gardens and moved carefully through the trees and flowers. Suddenly, Minho's eyes went wide. He spun around and tackled Hana to the ground. A plasma bolt burned through the air where her head had been a split second before. The shot came from behind them, from a direction Minho had not been looking. He was 3 meters away with his back turned when he reacted. It should have been impossible. The guards found the assassin and captured him quickly, but Hana barely noticed. She stared at Minho as he helped her to her feet. Her hearts were pounding. Not from fear of the attack, from what she had just witnessed. "You could not have seen that shot," she said. "You were not looking in that direction. You knew it was coming before it happened." Minho's calm face showed strain for the first time. He looked tired, almost sad. "Yes," he admitted. "I felt the intention of the assassin. I felt the danger before it manifested. Princess, I told you that humans have awareness beyond the normal senses. I was not exaggerating." "What are you?" Hana demanded. "What are humans really?" Before Minho could answer, a message arrived on Hana's communication device. It came from Earth's government. The message was simple but significant. Earth was willing to provide direct military support to the Valkyrie Empire, but there was one condition. Ambassador Minho had to personally approve the deployment, not the Earth government, not their military, Minho himself. Hana looked at the message, then at her husband. "You are not just an ambassador, are you?" Minho shook his head slowly. "No, I am one of the few humans trained in our oldest discipline. Your people would call us mystics or psychics. We call ourselves the aware. And there are things about humanity that the galaxy does not know, things we have kept hidden for a very long time. Perhaps it is time you learned the truth." The attack came 3 days later. The Theos Dominion sent their entire battle fleet directly to the Valkyrie capital world. Their ships emerged from quantum tunnels in high orbit, appearing without warning. The orbital defense stations opened fire immediately, but there were too many enemy vessels. Plasma bolts began raining down on the planet's surface. Hana was in the palace war room when the first strike hit the shield generators. The entire building shook. Alarms screamed throughout the complex. Her father, the Emperor, ordered an immediate evacuation, but the transport ships were being destroyed before they could launch. They were trapped. Minho found Hana as she was organizing the palace guard. His face was calm, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. He took her hand. "Come with me," he said quietly. "Now I cannot abandon my post," Hana protested. "If you stay here, you will die," Minho said. "Trust me, please." Something in his voice made her follow. They ran through the corridors as explosions rocked the palace. A plasma strike tore through the western wall. Fire and debris filled the hallway ahead of them. There was no way forward. Behind them, she could hear the ceiling collapsing. They were going to die here. Minho pulled Hana close and took both her hands. He looked into her eyes with an intensity she had never seen before. "What I'm about to do will frighten you," he said. "But I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Hana nodded. She had no other choice. Minho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. And then everything stopped. The fire froze in mid-flicker. The falling debris hung motionless in the air. The sound of explosions vanished, replaced by absolute silence. Hana looked around in shock. Time itself had stopped. Everything except her and Minho. "What did you do?" Aishi whispered. Minho opened his eyes. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His hands trembled slightly. "I am not stopping time," he said, his voice strained. "I am asserting the concept of stillness over this area. It will not last long. We need to move." He guided her through the frozen destruction. They walked past flames that did not burn, through falling stone that did not fall. Hana felt like she was in a nightmare. The world around her was wrong, fundamentally wrong, but Minho kept walking, his concentration absolute. They reached a safe corridor far from the battle damage. Minho released whatever force he had been holding. Time resumed. The distant sounds of war returned. Minho collapsed against the wall, blood trickling from his nose. "Minho!" Hana caught him before he fell. His skin was cold and clammy. "What is wrong? What did that do to you?" "Using the power has a cost," he said weakly. "I will be fine, but I need you to understand something. What you just saw is humanity's greatest secret. We do not manipulate matter or energy like your technology does. We manipulate concepts, ideas, the fundamental building blocks beneath reality." Hana stared at him. "That is impossible. Concepts are not real things. They are just ideas. Everything is built on concepts, Minho said. Matter is the concept of substance. Energy is the concept of motion. Time is the concept of change. My people learned how to touch those concepts directly, to influence them, to reshape them within limits. Palace medics arrived and began treating Minho. Hana stood in shock, trying to process what she had learned. Her husband was not human in any normal sense. He was something far more powerful and terrifying. While the medics worked, she contacted Earth. A woman appeared on the communication screen. She was ancient, her face lined with countless years, but her eyes were sharp and knowing. Princess Hana, the woman said, I am Elder Jiwan. I believe your husband has just revealed our secret to you. He stopped time, Hana said, her voice shaking. He changed reality itself. What are you people? We are humans, Jiwan replied. But we are also more than that. During our earliest history, when we were still primitive, some of our ancestors began to perceive the world differently. They could sense the patterns beneath the surface of things. Over thousands of years, we refined that ability. We learned to not just perceive concepts, but to influence them. Why did you hide this? Hana demanded. This power could have ended the war years ago. Giwan's expression grew sad. Because we learned what happens when others know about it. Some species worship us as gods. Others try to destroy us out of fear. And a few try to capture us to weaponize our abilities. We chose neutrality and secrecy to protect ourselves, and to protect the galaxy from what we could become if we used our power without restraint. What Minho did today, Jiwan continued, was dangerous, not just for him, but for reality itself. Conceptual manipulation is not a toy. Done carelessly, it can unravel the fabric of existence. One of our people once accidentally asserted the concept of ending while practicing. A small moon ceased to exist. Not destroyed, simply gone, erased from reality, as if it had never been. Hana felt cold. Then why did Minho risk using it? Ji smiled gently. Because he loves you, princess. And because sometimes the risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of acting. But now the secret is out. Other powers will learn what happened here today, and the galaxy will never be the same. News of what happened at the palace spread across the galaxy within hours. Witnesses had seen the impossible. A section of the palace had frozen in the middle of an attack. Fire had stopped burning. Debris had hung in the air, and a human had walked through it all unharmed. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some species declared humans to be saviors, sent by the universe itself. Others called them dangerous abominations that should be destroyed before they became too powerful. The Velkari Empire was divided. Half the nobles wanted to exploit this new knowledge. The other half feared it. Hana demanded answers. Elder Jiwan agreed to come to the Velkari capital in person. She arrived on a small ship alone and unafraid. When she met Hana in the royal council chambers, the ancient human bowed respectfully. You want to understand? Ji said it was not a question. Very well. I will teach you what I can. But you must understand that this knowledge is dangerous. Many who learn about our abilities become obsessed with gaining them. That path leads only to madness. Over the following days, G1 explained how conceptual manipulation worked. Reality, she said, was not as solid as most beings believed. Everything that existed was built on fundamental concepts. Matter was the concept of substance given form. Energy was the concept of motion made manifest. Time was the concept of change flowing forward. Most species interact with the expressions of these concepts. Jiwan said, your technology manipulates matter and energy, but humans learn to touch the concepts themselves. We edit the source code of reality instead of working with the compiled program. Can anyone learn this? Hana asked. Jiwan shook her head. No, only humans have the specific neural structure required to perceive concepts directly. We do not know why. Perhaps it was evolution. Perhaps it was chance. Perhaps something else gave us this gift long ago. But it is part of what makes us human. Hana watched Minho during his training sessions. She saw him sit in meditation for hours, his breathing slow and controlled. Then he would open his eyes and perform miracles. He turned chaotic flowing water into perfect stillness by asserting the concept of order. He made fragile crystal as strong as steel by imposing the concept of durability. He connected two objects across a room by establishing the concept of unity between them. But the power had limits. G1 explained that humans could not violate the fundamental laws of the universe. They could not create infinite energy, or reverse entropy. They could not make water flow uphill forever, or make light travel faster than causality allowed. The concepts they manipulated had to work within the rules of reality, just in unexpected ways. Think of it like this, Giwan said. We cannot break the laws of physics, but we can change which laws apply to a specific situation. We can assert that an object experiences the concept of lightness instead of weight. We can establish that a barrier holds the concept of impermeability instead of solidity. The result appears miraculous, but it is still working within the rules. While Hana was learning, the political situation deteriorated. The Theos Dominion sent a message to Earth. They demanded that humans remain completely neutral. If any human used their abilities to aid the Velkari Empire again, the Dominion would consider it an act of war and attack Earth directly. Earth's response confused everyone. They simply said they would consider the request. No promises, no threats, no fear. That response terrified the Dominion more than any show of force would have. What kind of species received a threat of total war and responded with calm consideration? Anna's younger sister Curie commanded one of the Velkari battle fleets. She had always been suspicious of humans and their strange ways. But everything changed when her flagship was ambushed by Dominion forces. The ship's hull was breached in 3 places. Hundreds of her crew were dying. The ship was going to explode within minutes. Minho was aboard the flagship as a diplomatic observer. When the attack began, he moved to the worst breach. Jiri watched in amazement as he placed his hands on the torn metal. He closed his eyes and concentrated. The metal began to flow like liquid, sealing the breach, but it was not melting. He was asserting the concept of integrity, making the ship whole again, by changing what it meant to be damaged. Minho moved to each breach and repeated the process. By the time he was finished, the ship was saved, but he collapsed from exhaustion. Curie carried him to the medical bay herself. When he woke up, she was sitting beside his bed. "I was wrong about your people," Curie said quietly. "I thought you were weak, but this power used the way you use it, to protect and preserve, rather than destroy. This is true strength." Minho smiled weakly. "Shout wisdom is just violence. My people learned that lesson the hard way long ago." As the days passed, Hana found herself growing closer to Minho. What had started as a political marriage was becoming something real. She admired his restraint, his careful use of immense power. She appreciated his patience in teaching her about concepts she could barely understand, and she realized that he had chosen to reveal his secret, not out of pride, but out of love. He had risked everything to save her. But Elder Jiwan grew concerned. She pulled Hana aside one evening and spoke in a low voice. "There is something you need to know, something we have kept hidden even from most humans. Our power does not come without cost. And I do not just mean the physical exhaustion." "What do you mean?" Hana asked. John's ancient eyes looked troubled. "When we manipulate concepts, we attract attention. There are things that exist between concepts in the spaces where ideas have not yet become real. We call them the Void Watchers, and they do not like it when mortals tamper with the foundations of reality. If we use our power too much, too boldly, they come. And when they come, reality itself begins to unravel." Hana could not sleep that night. She kept thinking about what Elder Jiwan had said. Things that existed between concepts, watchers in the void. It sounded like ancient mythology, like ghost stories told to frighten children. But Jiwan was serious, and that frightened Hana more than any weapon or army. The next day, she went to the palace archives. She searched through ancient Velkari records, looking for anything that might relate to what Giwan had described. What she found made her blood run cold. There were references scattered through dozens of old texts, beings with impossible abilities, visitors who could reshape reality with thought alone, and warnings about what happened to civilizations that drew too much attention from the spaces between. One account was particularly detailed. A species called the Architects had existed millions of years ago. They had built wonders that modern science could not explain. Structures that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Devices that bent space and time. And then suddenly they vanished. Not defeated in war, not destroyed by disaster, simply gone, as if they had been erased from existence. Hana brought her findings to Jijuan. The ancient humans studied the records carefully. Her expression grew grave. "Yes," Jijuan said quietly. "We know about the Architects. Humanity discovered their ruins during our early exploration of space. That is how we learned about the danger of our own abilities. The architects could manipulate concepts far more powerfully than we can, but they grew arrogant. They tried to reshape reality itself according to their will, and something came for them. What came for them? Ahana asked. We do not know exactly, J1 admitted. The architect ruins contained warnings, but they were fragmentary. They spoke of entities that exist in the void between defined reality, things that maintain the boundary between what is and what could be. When too much conceptual manipulation occurs in one place, these entities notice, and they come to restore balance. How do they restore balance? Yana asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. They erase the source of the disturbance, Jiwan said. The architects were removed from reality. Not killed, removed, made to have never existed. That is why we only have ruins. The universe itself forgot them. Hana felt sick. And you think this could happen to humanity? It is why we have been so careful, Jiwan said. Why we stayed hidden. Why we use our power sparingly. But now, with the secret revealed, with Minho using his abilities so dramatically, we may have already crossed a threshold. As if to confirm her fears, Minho began having strange dreams. He woke up in the middle of the night gasping for breath. He told Hana about seeing geometries that should not exist, angles that bent in impossible directions, colors that had no name, and worst of all, he heard whispers in a language made of pure meaning rather than words. John examined him carefully. Her face grew pale. You have attracted their attention, she said. The Void Watchers are aware of you now. The dreams will get worse, and if we continue using conceptual manipulation, they will come fully into our reality. But the choice was taken from them. Strange phenomena began occurring across the galaxy. In some regions, physical laws stopped working correctly. Gravity reversed itself randomly. Light bent in ways that violated relativity. Objects appeared and disappeared without cause. Scientists were baffled, but Giwan knew what it meant. The boundary is weakening, she said. Reality is becoming unstable. The Watchers are preparing to cross over. Earth's government began quietly evacuating major population centers. They did not explain why. They simply moved people to remote locations and told them to wait. Other humans with conceptual abilities were recalled to special facilities. Mino received orders to return home, but he refused. I will not abandon Hana, he said firmly. And I will not leave the Velkari to face this threat alone. We caused this problem. We must be part of the solution. Then the Theos Dominion made everything worse. They did not understand what was happening. They saw only that reality was becoming unstable near human populations. They blamed humanity for the chaos, and they decided to eliminate the source of the problem. The Dominion launched a massive attack directly on Earth. Thousands of warships emerged in Earth's solar system. They opened fire on human colonies and stations. Earth's defenses activated, but the Dominion had overwhelming numbers. It looked like humanity would be wiped out. What the Dominion did not know was that Earth had thousands of trained conceptual manipulators. They had kept most of their people hidden, pretending to be ordinary humans. But when their homeworld was threatened, they all acted together. Thousands of humans asserted concepts simultaneously. They established distance between the attacking ships and their targets. They imposed the concept of deflection on enemy weapons. They created absence where Dominion forces tried to strike. The defense was successful. The Dominion fleet was driven back without a single human casualty. But the cost was catastrophic. The concentrated use of conceptual manipulation in one location was exactly what Giwan had warned against. It was like ringing a bell that echoed through the void, and something heard it. Minho felt it first. He was with Hana on the Velkari capital when it happened. He suddenly screamed and collapsed. His body convulsed. Blood ran from his nose and ears. Hana held him terrified, not knowing what to do.
It is here!
Minho gasped.
The Watcher! It has crossed into our reality!
Oh, ancestors. It is so much worse than we imagined. Across the galaxy, sensors detected an anomaly near Earth. Space itself was tearing open, and through the tear, something was emerging. Something that had no physical form, because it existed between the concepts of existence and non-existence. The Void Watcher had arrived, and wherever it went, reality began to dissolve. The first ship to encounter the entity was a Dominion cruiser. It had stayed behind after the failed attack on Earth, monitoring the strange spatial tear. When the Watcher emerged, the cruiser tried to scan it, but there was nothing to scan. The entity had no matter, no energy signature, no physical presence at all. Then the cruiser simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded. It was there one moment, and gone the next. The other Dominion ships nearby tried to remember what the cruiser had looked like, but they could not. They could not even remember its name. It was as if the ship had never existed at all. Panic spread through the galaxy. Both Dominion and human forces retreated from the area around Earth. But the entity did not chase them. It simply expanded. A sphere of unstable reality grew larger with each passing hour. Within that sphere, causality became optional. Ships appeared in multiple locations at once. Time flowed differently for different observers. Thoughts became physical. Reality itself was breaking down. Elder Jiwan called an emergency meeting. She appeared on screens across the Valkyrie capital, looking older and more tired than ever. Hana and Minho attended along with the Emperor and his advisors. This is what destroyed the architects, Jiwan said. The Void Watcher exists to maintain the separation between concepts and their physical expressions. When too much conceptual manipulation occurs, it arrives to rebalance reality. From our perspective, that means annihilation. Can we fight it? Hana's father asked. No, Jiwan said bluntly. Conventional weapons cannot touch it, because it does not exist in physical space, and using conceptual manipulation against it would only attract it more strongly. The more we fight, the faster it will spread. Then what can we do? Minho asked. Jian was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy. There is only one option. Someone must enter the conceptual realm, the space between ideas where the Watcher truly exists. Someone must go there and convince it to withdraw or compel it to do so. How? Nana demanded. By projecting consciousness directly into the conceptual realm, Zhao Juan said. It is incredibly dangerous. The human mind is not meant to exist in that space. You would be reduced to pure essence, to the fundamental concepts that define you. And if you fail to maintain your sense of self, you would dissolve completely. I will go, Minho said immediately. No, Hana said firmly. Not alone. I am coming with you. Minho stared at her. Hana, you are not human. You cannot manipulate concepts. The conceptual realm would destroy you instantly. Then teach me how to survive it. Hana said. You told me that you can sense concepts even if you cannot change them. Perhaps I can learn to perceive them as well, even if I cannot manipulate them. And perhaps that different perspective is exactly what we need. Jiwan considered this. She has a point. The Watcher exists in a space of pure concepts. A being who can only perceive without manipulating might see things differently. It is a terrible risk, but we have no good options. The preparation took 2 days. Miningho taught Hana meditation techniques that humans had refined over thousands of years. He showed her how to quiet her mind, how to sense the patterns beneath physical reality. She was a quick student, driven by desperation and love. On the night before the attempt, Hana and Minho sat together in the palace gardens. The stars above them seemed dimmer than usual, as if the universe itself was fading. I am afraid, Hana admitted. Not of dying, but of losing myself. Of forgetting who I am in that place between thoughts. Minho took her hand. I will anchor you. As long as I remember you, you will have something to hold on to, and you will do the same for me. We will be each other's connection to reality. When did this marriage become real? Mihana asked softly. Minho smiled. For me, it was when you demanded answers instead of running away in fear. You saw the impossible and wanted to understand it. That is when I knew you were someone special. For me, Hana said, it was when you risked everything to save me in the palace. You revealed your secret, knowing it could lead to this exact situation. You chose love over safety. They sat in silence for a while, holding hands under the fading stars. Both knew this might be their last night together, but neither spoke of it. There would be time enough for grief if they failed. For now they simply existed together. Two beings from different worlds, who had found something precious in the space between duty and destiny. The next morning, they gathered in a specially prepared chamber. Elder Jiwan had set up equipment to monitor their physical bodies while their consciousness traveled. Curie stood guard outside, her weapon ready, though they all knew no weapon would matter if this failed. Hana and Minho sat facing each other, hands clasped together. Jiwan spoke the words of an ancient human ritual, a meditation technique older than written history. Their breathing synchronized, their heartbeats aligned, and then together, they let go of physical reality. Hana felt herself dissolve, her body, her memories, her very identity began to fade. But she held on to one thing, one concept that defined her, understanding she was a being who sought to comprehend. And as long as she held that truth, she remained herself. Beside her, she felt Minho as a presence of intention and change, and together they fell into the space between concepts toward the entity that threatened all existence. The conceptual realm was not a place. It had no space, no distance, no physical form. Hana existed there as pure meaning. She was the concept of understanding made conscious. Beside her, she sensed Minho as the concept of intention and change. They were ideas that could think, awareness without body. The Watcher appeared before them, not as a creature, but as an absence. It was the unspace between here and there, the untime between now and then, the void where concepts ended and nothing began. Looking at it hurt in ways that had no name. It was wrongness made manifest. The Watcher communicated not in words but in pure meaning, downloaded directly into their consciousness. It showed them its purpose. It existed to maintain the boundary between potential and actuality. When conscious beings manipulated concepts carelessly, they risked collapsing all possibility into a single frozen state. The Watcher prevented that by removing the source of disturbance. Hana understood something that Minho could not, because she could not manipulate concepts. She saw the Watcher differently. To Minho, it appeared as a threat, an enemy to be fought or fled from. But to Hana, it was something else. It was a guardian, a necessary part of reality's immune system. She reached out with her consciousness, not to fight, not to manipulate, simply to understand and be understood. She showed the Watcher what humanity was, a young species that had stumbled onto power they barely comprehended. People who were trying to learn, to grow, to use their abilities responsibly. The Watcher showed her the architects. They had been different. They used their power to reshape reality according to their desires. They tried to make the universe conform to their will, to eliminate all concepts they disliked. They had to be removed to preserve the dynamic nature of existence. Hana understood. The Watcher did not hate, it did not judge. It simply maintained balance. But it needed to know the difference between those who respected reality and those who sought to dominate it. She proposed something unprecedented, a covenant. Humanity would acknowledge the Watcher's role. They would use conceptual manipulation sparingly and carefully. They would never attempt to reshape the fundamental nature of reality. In exchange, the Watcher would tolerate localized temporary changes. It would allow humans to exist with their power, as long as they remained responsible. What followed was a negotiation conducted in pure concepts. Hana argued with ideas rather than words. She presented cooperation versus elimination, balance versus stagnation, responsibility versus suppression. The Watcher considered each concept carefully. Finally, it agreed, but it demanded a price. One being must remain partially in the conceptual realm, serving as an intermediary. This being would monitor human use of conceptual manipulation. If humanity broke the covenant, this intermediary would be the first to know and the first to suffer the consequences. Minho accepted without hesitation, but Hana stopped him. She realized something profound. The intermediary should not be someone who could manipulate concepts. That person would be too tempted to use their power when they saw problems. The intermediary needed to be someone who could only perceive and understand, someone who would serve as a bridge between two ways of being. She volunteered herself. Minho protested, but Hana was certain. She asked him to transfer a portion of his conceptual awareness to her. It was something Elder Jiwan had said was impossible. But in the conceptual realm, surrounded by pure ideas, the impossible became merely difficult. Minho wo, a connection between them. He gave her the ability to sense concepts without the power to change them. Hana felt something fundamental shift inside her being. She became partially human, in a way that transcended biology. She could perceive the space between ideas. She could feel when reality was being manipulated. She would be the bridge. The Watcher accepted this arrangement. It withdrew from physical reality, taking the sphere of chaos with it. The tear in space sealed. Across the galaxy, the strange phenomena stopped. Reality stabilized, and Hana and Minho returned to their bodies. They woke in the chamber, gasping for breath. Elder Jiwon and Curry rushed to their sides. Both were alive. Both were changed. Hana could now sense things she never could before. The flow of concepts beneath physical reality, the places where ideas became matter, and most importantly, she could feel when someone used conceptual manipulation anywhere in the galaxy. The war ended within weeks. The Theos Dominion sued for peace, as did several other aggressive powers. Everyone had witnessed something far more profound than their conflicts. The galaxy understood now that there were forces beyond their comprehension, and that provoking them was suicide. Humanity's secret was known to all, but now it was respected rather than feared. Other species saw that humans used their power carefully with awareness of the consequences, and they saw that Hana, an alien who married into humanity, had become the guardian of the covenant. She was proof that different species could unite in something greater than themselves. Years passed. Hana and Minho had 3 children. The eldest daughter showed signs of conceptual awareness, even stronger than her father's. The Velkari scientists were fascinated. The ability was passing into other species through hybrid offspring. Perhaps in time, many species would develop this awareness. And perhaps that was the Watcher's true purpose. Not to eliminate those who could manipulate concepts, but to ensure they evolved with wisdom. Hana taught her children about the space between concepts. She explained that power without wisdom led to catastrophe. That strength meant knowing when not to use force. That the greatest achievements came not from dominating reality, but from understanding it deeply enough to work with its flow rather than against it. Elder Jiwon, now impossibly ancient, visited them often. She watched the children play and smiled. One day, she spoke to Hana privately. "You know what you have done?" Huan asked. "What do you mean?" Hana replied. "You have changed the destiny of all conscious beings," Jiwon said. "The architects tried to reshape reality to match their will. They failed because they saw the universe as something to be dominated. But you showed a different path. You negotiated. You found balance. You proved that power and wisdom can coexist. That is the true measure of an advanced civilization." Hana looked out at the stars. She could sense the flow of concepts beneath their light, the endless dance of ideas becoming reality, and reality inspiring new ideas. And somewhere in the void between, she felt the Watcher's presence, not threatening, simply watching, maintaining the balance, ensuring that the universe remained dynamic, uncertain, and beautifully alive. The marriage that began as political necessity had become the foundation of a new era, an era where different species learned to share, not just space but understanding, where power was tempered by wisdom, and where the impossible became simply the next step in evolution. Hana and Minho stood together, their children playing nearby, guardians of a covenant that would shape the future of all consciousness. The war was over, but the real work of building a better galaxy had only just begun.